Hello, everybody. Welcome to round number 3. This isn't the final round. Wait a moment, gentlemen. Lexi feels a little bit superior again because I called it. There would be a flub on the podcast, and that was the flub. I don't expect it to happen again, though. Gentlemen, let's break down this previous game that we saw coming into this third game. Nymera, it still felt, even when V3 were ahead by 8k gold, that Sengoku could win this game.
Absolutely. I mean, so I've got the main stream on, so you can see the highlight coming through. But like, just in this fight, Jinx gets to free fire, and if Jinx gets to free fire, you still have a chance of losing. Jinx goes untouched for the grand majority of this, and even at that huge goal deficit, it was very worrying that V3 hadn't closed out the game at that point. I think that goes to show testament to how well Sengoku had drafted this composition.
Thankfully, though, the wombo combo of Rel plus Cog plus Hollow, everything just comes in together, and a huge amount of AoE effect damage just absolutely removes the member of Sengoku. But yeah, as you said, there were so many options. If that Rel doesn't get that engaged, that Sengoku turn a lot of this damage.
Jinx was still
excited.
excited. Jinx was still
Right?
excited. I mean, has the range, has rapid fire cannon for extra autos coming through. Conqueror was fully stacked at that point, so loads of AD. There's every chance that Jinx and had enough items. Yeah, there's every chance that Jinx just runs away with that fight, and then they run down mid with that.
So if you're V3, you feel good because you got the win, right? That's one on the board. You just need 2 more. What can you do to try and prevent this from happening when you are maybe 2-3k ahead and that Gango can't just somehow come into this game? That crash can't just cause so many issues and actually begin that opening. Let's go to initialize for this first part.
I think you need to be a little bit more cautious with your lead. That attempted invade over by the Raptor push got them punished real hard.
It did.
And I think also that you probably need to just get on Gango, just really force on him a little bit earlier as well. Once you had that lead, you had the tools, the Twisted Fate and Udyr to really force, especially considering you can be there quicker than a teleport can be. And between the amount of CC, that's a Jinx. Yes, she's got a cleanse, but you've got enough chain CC to make sure she dies before teleports come through. And at that point, you win realistically the 5 or the 5v4 or the 4v3 or whatever it happens to be, especially as Kai'Sa's not exactly fallen behind as well. I think you just need to put that Jinx further behind. The fact she managed to stay ahead in gold for most of that game was problematic.
I also think that just Kai'Sa priority in a front-to-back style is bad. I know that the Kai'Sa popped off this game, but Kai'Sa is not good at front-to-back. If you want to start playing these team fights, you just can't allow Sengoku to group up like that without the necessary backline access. The only reason this fight was won is because of this game was won because of Reiner's huge team fight plays, which actually reached the Jinx. Even then, they were few and far between. Often the hook would come onto the Rel first and kind of stop that train of thought just as it leaves the station. I think that Kai'Sa is not really the pick if you want to dive the back lane and stop Gango being a real threat. Of course, it worked in this game and they managed to snowball around it correctly, but it's still not the pick which I really like to see when you're going towards this style of composition.
So, with that in mind, we've already hinted towards it once. Pick and ban phase has been kind of a catastrophe so far, and that's putting it rather politely. If certain analysts were watching it, they would definitely be molding furiously. And that's just kind of globally at this point, because some of these pick and bans have been questionable, I would say, in Nymera.
So,
let me go higher, please. I can't physically go much higher.
I think that the first 3 picks from Sengoku are fine. I think that Sengoku kind of, they were okay with this pick and ban. Whatever, I'm not going to point a finger at them. V3, though,
that's who I'm pointing a finger at.
What's happening with Seraphine, buddy? Because you had a chance to first pick it. Yes, I think that getting yourself the Udyr as a first pick is fine, but just pick up the Seraphine, please. Seraphine is such a powerful composition, maker or breaker in so many ways. Because yeah, you have, we've got the Jinx on the other side. If you're doing that into a Seraphine, doing that through so much healing and shielding, you don't really get to take the same amount of fights in that same kind of manner, So I think that V3 in particular, they've been exposed for not playing some of the most strong champions on the patch, and I think that will come back to bite them at some point.
I mean, they're already having to ban Senna with some consistency because they're worried about Gango, and let's see how this pick and ban phase goes for V3 this time. Sengoku on blue side. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lexi. 1-1 is the game saw. Sengoku Gaming dropped in that last one after V3, get a great snowball through their jungler with a bit of assistance from his solo lanes, taking away that early game and managing to scrap it out when things got a little bit closer in the late. Few bans coming out already. Sengoku taking off the Galio, Tristana, and the Gnar one more time on blue side, whereas the other side is V3 getting rid of the Senna, yes, but also two of those high priority junglers. That does leave Seraphine open for a first pick, but people just love this Thresh and the Jinx that will follow surely if they lock after.
You know that V3 doesn't play Seraphine, not really. They like they're saying, they left it through the second ban phase in the last one, taking away something like the Thresh to set up for a lane dominant bot side because you know that your duo lane loves to do that, and then still potentially pick up the Seraphine for Ramune or of course in the next round of picks is a powerful way to win yourself the early stage of this draft, and then look to round out your composition with something again which plays front to back and allows you to play around that slow and methodical teamfight style. Reiner gets Rel again, though, and this is now taking away the Rel against the Jinx, so you don't, of course, have that same target accessibility, and instead, Crash is going for the Olaf. Yes, the Aphelios is locked in return. Ganger has great stats on that, but Seraphine is just being completely forgotten in this draft phase.
She has, but I can also understand taking away a priority jungler considering the bans have come through. I can understand taking the Aphelios before that goes as well, especially considering you've locked in the Thresh. If Seraphine survives the second round here, I assume she is an immediate pickup for Sengoku Gaming. V3 now thinking about locking in the Lilia and do so.
They do, and yes, you kind of have to ban away the supportive mid laners at this point from V3, because if you have shields and speed ups going on to Olaf, repositioning this Aphelios and just giving team-wide shields, that's a big problem for V3. I actually think they might end up banning away the Rise, just because that's what Ramune has been very comfortable on recently. And on the other side, Sengoku trying to get themselves a more preferential early game matchup for top lane again. I wonder if they're actually going to go towards that Volibear last time, because it seemed like Paz didn't really know how to deal with that matchup in that one. Of course, not having his hands on the Scion on that last game, maybe that was the problem too.
A reminder again about why Sengoku have prioritized that Aphelios pick here in this first round rather than something like the Seraphine. Gango stats on the champion are nuts. Nymera alluded to it a little bit beforehand, but some concrete numbers. Average CS differential at 15 over this whole split, 25.8. Average gold differential at 15. Also, near enough 1,500 gold. This guy is a monster on the champion, particularly in lane. Backed up by something like the Thresh, so you can understand why you might prefer to go for something like that. Interesting to see the Lucian ban here, considering that's not necessarily an ace pick.
So they do play it.
Finally see a Seraphine is finally locked in, and Nymera sounds exasperated.
Why weren't you picking this before? I mean, there's every chance
Maybe they
you
don't
crap
play it
at
well. Maybe that's
they don't
the
play it
problem.
well,
Yeah,
sure. But now they have themselves optional engage, being able to stay at range with the Lilia. Silas is going to come through as a response. You get to steal away the Relol is okay. The Super Death Rock is okay, but particularly the Encore is just so disgusting.
So good, yes.
On the Silas. But at this point, sure, you're picking up a really strong front line, but you've already picked in a diving mid laner that doesn't want to play fight slowly. You actually can genuinely play Darius into this comp. You already have the move speed from the Seraphine, which can
Got an Encore to
stop
go through
buffing
him
you
as
on,
well.
and you destroy tanks in that 1v1. Aatrox, not awful into Scion 2. You can, again, punish him in the early game, and have that move speed buff from the Seraphine, which can keep you in that fight and keep you relevant. Go for the Stride Breaker as well. It means that actually you do have a bit more target accessibility onto Aphelios in these team fights. And with Reiner on the Rel, I somehow V3 have muddled their way through to a decent draft. Somehow.
It's a front to back from both squads, but Nymera's perplexed, bemused.
Sometimes
Tone of
I
voice there
hate what
tells
goes
you
through
that
the prep
V3
stages of these teams. Whatever's working out in scrims is telling them a lot of false positives, because the way this draft has worked out is completely alien to me.
Yeah, in fairness, I don't think Sengoku have a bad comp themselves. Like, Silas works well with the ultimate he's got available to work with him. both these teams can feel like their comps work, right? They're not like they're completely unfeasible into each other, but the fact that you've got this Seraphine, Rel, Jinx, all kind of together with the Lilting Lullaby as well, that's pretty good for V3, even if their front line is a little weaker.
Because you can also go get Putrefier second for Ace. You go Moonstone into Putrefier, and suddenly Ramune Silas does very little, and Crash on
Crash
this,
as well on the Olaf.
On the Olaf is going to do very little. I think that second item, Putrefier, and it really seals this game for V3 in a lot of ways in terms of the team fight phase. This is going to have to be a strong laning performance from Sengoku, and it can't just be from that bot lane. Yes, you can start rolling around the map and start taking tower plates, and we know that Gango and NT are so strong as a 2v2, but it can't just be them doing well. If Crash falls behind, if Ace is then left on an island to scale up to 2-3 items on the Seraphine, Sengoku, they'll be in dire straits.
Potentially so. I mean, also, I like Putrefier into Aphelios as well, frankly. I mean, Severum's a lot of healing for him. It's a lot of how he duels, potentially. Bringing in that Putrefier makes his life significantly more challenging. So, with that in mind, we'll have to see how it goes. Sengoku are going to have to deal with a bit of a 5-man stack here from V3, and it's going to be that early Pixel Ward. You know it. Ryder's brought support this time. The Ward Wars continue.
I mean, you can't fault them for trying. V3 this time reacting to the reaction from Sengoku in game 2 of that bot lane ward. And what this has meant, though, Sengoku get themselves a ward onto the Raptors. I think this is going to end up dying. I think, so important thing, if you share XP with, well, more than 3 people, I think actually you don't get that extra level up at the end of the wave for level 1, and because there were 4 people around that ward death, I don't think that means that Cog will get level 2 off that first wave.
Oh, good to note. We are now with, once again, topside jungle starts. Of course, Liliet doing her leashless Raptor start is no surprise. It's one of her favorite things to do. We have had this conversation before on cast. Watch out, EAP. EAP is an acronym. It stands for Eviscerates Enemy Poultry, and does exactly that. The chickens are not long for this world, and she's going to wander straight over to Crash's Raptors, straight on that option as well. Will be on vision, so Crash knows this is happening at least.
Yeah, they do. So they knew what was happening to those Raptors immediately, but not having lane priority in mid, with the Q start from Ramune, not going for anything particularly aggressive like the E, you can occasionally do that on the sides. In fact, you actually do that quite a lot in stuff like melee matchups. But Crash now going to be down in camps, not taking away any camps of Mujins at this point. Means that Crash will now walk into the bot side jungle and go, oh, well, that's kind of unfortunate. Sees that's gone down, doesn't even throw an axe over, and yeah, now Sengoku once again having to play a little bit behind now in that jungle matchup.
Power spike relatively even, I suppose. Slightly V3 favored towards the mid game, and very much Sengoku game favored towards the hyper late game, sort of like post that 30-ish minute mark. But NT trying to trade back. That's a good death sentence into Flay, and Reiner going to get traded back on a little bit there as well himself.
Well, Gango is still going for the Cull start. He just knows that early on into the game, Aphelios is so lane dominant if you play it correctly. Taking the Conqueror means that if you get that onslaught from the Severum, the Q ability, you just stack up Conqueror so well versus these beef ball supports, the tanks of your Rels, your Alicers, your Leonas, your Threshers, whatever they may be. You can win that 2v2 handily. They have themselves the advantage on the bot side right now. They've stacked up those waves. They get to choose what happens with that lane priority, and they're playing well around it right now.
They just absconding forwards there, seeing whether there was something to be found, but not really was the honest answer. The high notes keep flying, but not too much more, apart from a decent double beat drop there, catching 2 in place. That's always a nice touch, but Seraphine will continue to dance around, though he's a little low on mana, so the show might be on break for a moment while she goes and refills back at base. Bot side, though, you can see Gango and NT got the early shove on in, and they managed to do that a fair amount as Reiner doesn't really find the Crash. I was being traded around on. Big hook as well onto Jinx. Hollow getting a binding eclipsed in place. Big HP bar lead for Sengoku in this bot lane.
This is exactly what you expect out of Conqueror Aphelios. You have the Thresh to set things up, Aphelios to knock them down. Kog'Og having a better side of the trading things in the top side. Up a little bit of CS, going to shove Paz under turret. But Gango starting the cull, farming well, trading well. This is what we expect from this player on this champion. It's all going to script for Sengoku in this bot side.
Well, it does have Crashdown still available. Could still look for something. There is an Ignite. There is still Heal on Hollow as well. So there are some baits to be found. But the early advantage is certainly Sengoku favored right now. And they've got wards in the river as well, around the jungle entrances as well. They're on blue side as well. So it's not like they've got a lot of ways to play safe in this lane. Feeling very happy early on. Early plate coming their way as well.
So Jinx actually being zoned off quite a lot of range at this point too, which means that you don't stack up that attack speed on Pow, which means that often you don't have the attack speed quite enough to farm under turret. They've been denied 20 CS so far, or more like 15, I suppose. There is a big roam coming down towards bot side. But if they do go towards the blast cone, rather, they will have that ward, seeing any roaming members coming down from V3. Gango and NC, they do end up aggroing the minions. They can't cancel the recalls with a hook. Actually, they might look for it. They do cancel it.
Oh, boy. That's quite dangerous. There's another Q. Well, no binding eclipse popped quite yet. Was just at the edge of your screen there after Jinx ended up towards the top of it. But it is another interrupt. That's a big disadvantage. It gives Crash free range to top over this wall and begin the dragon as well. Mugen will be around, but they've got to be so afraid. Reiner could potentially look for an engage here. The bowling ball coming through, but Gango is relatively safe. He's got NT just hanging out, looking for a lantern, pull away if necessary, and Hollow and Reiner having a difficult time in lane here, more so than they have done in the rest of the series, it feels like.
Yes, Gango could get crashed down there. There could be a good night put through. There's a cleanse on Gango, and Reiner is low HP with no flash. You can go in. I think that's a one-way trip at that point. Mugen not at a point where they are threatening enough to this Aphelios. And Aphelios, with just the cull, again, this is the starting item from Gango, is just bullying around this bot lane of V3 and controlling the tempo of the map. While there were some early missteps, I suppose, from Crash and I suppose Paz in this 1v1 too, this bot lane bailing out Sengoku's early game pressure woes.
Exactly. And again, it's Aatrox into Sion. Aatrox is supposed to get something of an advantage in that lane if you're playing right, like of a nature of the matchup, I suppose, but Crash gets the early dragon. They had to seed half a wave under tower as well, so that's experience, that's gold loss. Gango up over 20 CS now. He'll come and collect more of this wave, and it will even out to something like 25-ish, I think, if I've counted correctly. That's not likely, by the way, guys. My wave management skills from looking at the mini-map, not the strongest. So take that with a grain of salt. We'll wait to see it actually play out.
I'm really, because I know you can look at the timer and know which wave is actually coming in and all that stuff. I'm awful at that. I'm a mid laner. I'm used to having going on to majors to have teleport, which means that I just don't actually have to reset well. Although I already carry my second
reset when you feel like it, you know? When does it feel right? No, that's the question, you know?
Well, maybe it feels right with to again get back to lane bullying from Gango. Yeah, it takes a bit of damage, doesn't really care. He's got himself a bit of lifesteal built up through the Bloodlines rune at this point. Of course, he has himself Ravenous Hunter 2 alongside the Taste of Blood. Lots of just small increments of healing coming in from the runes. Gango takes himself a tower. Well, doesn't take a tower shot, takes a rocket and doesn't care about it. Once again, just forcing the issue onto Hollow. Of course, this Jinx with the tier 2 boots, once you get up to those 2 items, is still going to be a big threat. Yes, if you do have a Sion that's been held down by Aatrox enough, when you have Crash that maybe walks up too far and gets comboed up by various CCs, has a really good chance to start popping off. A sleep into a Super Mega Death Rocket is a surefire way to get excited. But Hollow needs to get to that point without the Aphelios just outshining them in team fights.
Got Sylas into Seraphine as well, which, as far as I understand it, is somewhat Sylas favored, at least in terms of the all-ins. But right now, it's even enough down there.
Seraphine's numbers are really hard to contend with. This is the thing that,
true enough,
because Seraphine was designed to be, was intended to be a mid laner, but didn't really work out that way. But was designed to be a mid laner primarily, right? That was what the design team had said. because Seraphine was struggling to have, as much power outside of 2v2, because a lot of her kit is based around, having the passive that she has, which does depend on enemies, allies being
Stage
nearby,
presence,
and then of course being able to buff people up with their AoE shields, amongst other things. She's had to have, in compensation, a lot of very large numbers on her damage and her shields to be more viable in a solo lane, which means that she is actually pretty good at taking those all-ins with, like, the double-up shield versus the Sylas and being able to keep them at range, having that slow. Particularly against stuff like the Sylas in the early game, before you have CDR, before you have your Kingslayer maxed out, Sylas can struggle versus that Seraphine. They've even taken themselves the Ignite from the spellbook too, because if you go in for those all-ins, yeah, you are going to get a lot of extra damage coming through.
Well, early on, slight advantage to Sengoku in the gold. They've got a few hundred in their advantage, which is notable considering where that gold is of course. Aatrox got a bit of an advantage over the Sion, but Sion is fine being a bit behind. Jinx is less happy being that far behind an Aphelios, who is also doing very well in the same
Particularly
game.
since he's about to pop Cull. And that is going to be really awkward at that point. An extra 300 gold on top of the 100 from completing everything. Okay, beat drop lands onto Crash. I was wondering if there was going to be something happening there. See Paz ulting his way back topside, going to clear out this wave, and not going to opt into any fight, I suppose, without that Sion ult on the bot side of the map. Hopefully, for the side of Sengoku, they can just use their bot lane priority to fight towards the dragon. With the Scuttle going over towards Crash 2, looks more likely to do so.
Indeed, Skullcrab looks like it's about to be done. Sengoku Gaming also continuing to shove in. The Cull is about 3 CS, White Net 2, and 1 CS of popping. Gango pops the Cull, and suddenly there is the gold coming forwards, but that'll be Reiner going in with the level 6. Magnet Storm is there, but Gango gets a big turnaround. The Binding Eclipse is big. The Infernum as well. First blood to the Sylas. In with the Abscond, Abduct. Ace needs to find his way out. The flash is there. At least it's one back in trade, but 2 kills go over. They're both picked up by Sylas, and that is a disaster of an attempted gank in the bot side.
It is. The cleanse comes out after the stun comes through. Gango just turns it around, fires the Moonlight Varus, the root ult coming through, and the only reason the kill comes back is because NT just forgets that Seraphine actually does damage, and the double Q comes through and just doesn't flash away from it. Gets killed for that. 1 kill turned back on itself. The Sengoku get themselves a dragon off of that. Aphelios still in lane, still getting pressure, still getting CS. Sengoku very happy with the state of affairs.
Somewhat apropos, the one high note of the fight for V3 is that high note from from Ace landing to get the kill. See the engage here. It looks like Reiner has an option, but the cleanse and the healing, Binding Eclipse, it all goes wrong real fast.
That it does. So, particularly with the Aphelios cycling through their weapons and gets to the Severum to keep themselves at a even higher HP. Actually, the Ignite come down. I'm gonna take back that flame onto the failed flash away. It says, oh, right, okay, the Ignite's down. I probably die anyway. So NT probably choosing the correct choice in terms of conserving summoners. Gango has popped their Cull, has not reset yet as far as I'm aware. They're going to be a very, very strong hitman when they come back.
Indeed, they will be. I wonder whether they might have to pick up the Noon Quiver, actually, and we'll have to double check and see how much gold in the inventory if it turns back up, but you might well be right. The Cull's still in inventory. Would you normally sell that, I'd imagine?
I think you actually keep it. A lot of the time once you pop the Cull, just because the extra steel is actually quite nice. Yes, it does sell back for a decent amount of gold. As you can see, full Kraken Slayer bought in. I was like, wait, surely he can't have backed already. He must have much more gold than that. Absolutely does. 4 plates taken in the bot side already. Gango is now absolutely ready to steamroll through the next couple of minutes of this game. Things might turn around when we see the Kraken Slayer being built up for Hollow, and he already has those tier 2 boots, but that is a long way off from the perspective of V3. And the question is, can they stall to that point? Where are they looking to fight around? Can they also, very importantly, shut down the likes of Ramune with that shutdown gold on top of his head and get Gango away from minions and stop him from farming too?
And in the blink of an eye, it's gone from a 300-ish gold lead to a 2,000-ish gold lead. Sengoku Gaming have certainly found their way into this early game. Reiner gets hooked. There's the Chompers. Crashes around as well. And the crash down is just Reiner's health bar going down and out indeed. Another big pick in the bot side. This time, it's looks like the Olaf that picked that one up. Crash gets that one. Gango will get to seed this wave to turret as well and gets first turret.
He's just emoting a tower.
Oh, just dance dance on him.
Dance till you're
That's
dead.
rude.
Heads will roll. Reiner's on the bot side more so than anyone else's. And you're talking about the crash down. Well, the problem was he was already on in his unmounted form. You would have had to have mounted up to try and get out of that. But that means you don't have as many resistances. You don't have a shield coming through. Certainly not going to get away from that plate. The last plate falls in that bot side, and you do have the first tower gold going over to guess who? It's Gango on the Aphelios. And things are going from bad to worse from that perspective. 3,000 gold in. Gango has gone to another greener pasture.
Oh boy.
And is going topside.
That's a hell of a goal lead right there. Mamujin gets hit by the Moonlight Vigil. Binding Eclipse also through, but well buffered out.
You mean the Moonlight Varus?
But
what are you talking
the Moonlight
about? We
Varus,
have names for these at this point.
We do. What's the crescendo one called again?
The Rangers are Focus, because it's basically getting yourself the Ash queue up and available at that point.
I'm just a massive fan of our name.
So we had a whole list of these. We went through absolutely all of them.
I'm still a huge fan of the Severin version, which is just the emo plague. I think it's just beautiful. It's such a big.
Okay, we'll see if he brings out the Ace and the Calibrum next time. Full wave cleared from Paz charging up that ult on the bot side. And this is one of the great things about playing Sound of the Weak side. Your wave clear is just absurd. You don't get to have waves at turret. No, sir. Gango has himself.
Every ability is AoE. Every
ability is AoE, and that's the thing is, you can actually max any ability on Sion if you want. You still have wave clear, you still have the ability to tank things up. Most of the time it's been the Q max. We have even seen stuff like Emax before in lane, back in season 5, 6 at that point. Oh, Gango, this is just way too much damage. If he had ult, he could use the Ace and the Calibrum to finish off Cog. Fortunately for him, he does not have that available.
Not quite yet, and the puns keep rolling, so does the gold. Sengoku Gaming now up about 4,000 gold. That is quite the acceleration in lead from the 10-minute mark. Reminder again about
Hang on.
those...
Hey, Spuddy, why have you got an Oblivion Orb? Why are you not going for Putrefier?
Hang on, that's a fair one. I suppose it's cheaper healing reduction if he wants to kind of go towards the Staff of Flowing Waters quicker.
So, yes, it's a cheap way to get your hands on some Grievous Wounds. But let me just go find the Putrefier, which is 2,300 gold, by the way, which is 200
Quite
gold
cheap.
cheaper than a Oblivion Orbit, than the Morelnomicon itself. But if you anyway, if you heal or shield an ally, they do 60% healing reduction themselves. And we're going to have a bit of tower reduction as the Herald slams into that mid lane turret, and we now have ourselves a front-to-back opportunity. Ramne on the flank, probably once again looking to steal the encore. Gango, though, this is the person to watch. Wait to see if a Swell Seed lands, because if you manage to get on top of Gango, maybe that's what you can play around.
Well, Swell Seed only lands onto Paz, and maybe you can sleep the Scion, but I don't think you really want to. All the while, Crash has started up this dragon. It would be mountain soul point for Sengoku Gaming at the 17-minute mark. The Swell Seed again does land, but it doesn't really get to punish Gango all that much. Doesn't burn the cleanse, doesn't burn the flash, and it's all looking pretty disastrous already. Cog is going to be around, could be a way in. It's going to be the Dragon's Might secured. Cog gets the flash up, and Paz is in the backside. He's going to try and flash away. That's a big encore! It's got a massive Magnet Storm! It's going real well with Gango! Gets a big Magnet Storm, he gets one back! It's still not enough. The Infernum ultimate with the Moonlight Vigil is not enough. It's a triple for Cog, who gets more. He might even get a quadra from this if he can find the Stride Breaker. And the Umbral Dash. Crash will try and execute best he can. I don't think he's going to be able to. And that is a massive, massive deal. He does get that execute. That brings the goal significantly more even. Soul point still secured for Sengoku, but it comes at a mighty blood price.
Why are people giving Ryan a rel? He shows up again and again. We do see that, of course, Gango gets tagged by the Lily Roll. This isn't the thing which is followed up on, though, because, of course, Paz is stood there just being that tanky old son. You don't have something like the set to punt him back into the team. Stolen Encore. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, right, there's a real chance that Sengoku could run away with this fight, having themselves the team fight ultimate. But the Ragnarok's popped early. Paz doesn't really get too much done, and, well, Gango just walks up too far. That's kind of about it. He cleanses an incorrect point too. Of course, he gets the extra tenacity, and yes, the Mega Infernum bomb comes through. It's just not nearly enough damage at this point. You need about 3 items before you start seeing the huge one-shot capability that Aphelios was known for so much in his early phase of competitive play. And Sengoku, now they have to look at this and say, all right, at least we got the dragon. We're still in the lead. But we can't allow this to happen again. Jinx is now relevant in this game. Cog more than relevant in this game because of the gold that they have. V3 fighting back much in the same way that Sengoku did in that last game around the Jinx.
Indeed, they did. And that was a hell of an encore into the Magnet Storm between Ace and Rhino. Cog follows up as well, and it is a beautiful combo. What is it with Aatroxes in the river around Dragonfights, eh? The Shy haunts us all still. G2 turning over in their... I was going to say Graves, but that's just quite rude. I know they lost yesterday, but, it's a bit much still. And we're going to instead see a much more even game. Yes, it's still a big lead to Sengoku Gaming. Do not get me wrong. They've got about 2,000 gold.
So,
yes.
It is known. I play a lot of Assassins, and I'm not a massive fan of Enchanters. So what that has led to is that while I may talk about League of Legends quite a lot, it does not always mean I know the correct build path for certain items, and I apologize, Ace. One day I will play Seraphine, but it is not this day, and I will learn what builds into the Chemtech Putrefy, because it turns out that's exactly what the Oblivion Orb does. I apologize profusely.
I thought it did build into it, but I assumed I was wrong and didn't want to correct
Sam, if you were a Stan, if you were a Stan, if you were Greyheart, I would not be hearing the end of this for about good 2 hours now at this point. So thank you very much for that.
Look, I'm just going to be more subtle about it. That's all it's going to be. I'll keep slipping
the
it
insidious nature of Initializer's flame. It truly knows no bounds.
It's true. Wait for Oblivion. That's all we're going to say.
I was waiting for Skyrim. Hey, you're finally awake. Lilia hit you with their ultimate when you were trying to cross the border.
Well, we'll save all the item puns and what was the word? Disrespect. I will throw out towards Nymera later. We'll call it an encore, which was appropriate, I suppose, considering the champion that picked up the item. That said, we've got ourselves a little bit of a down space and time while we're waiting for this dragon to spawn again in about a minute or so, which would be Mountain Soul for Sengoku Gaming. Yes, they lost the fight, but they got the third dragon. So V3 kind of stop the snowball at least a little, but they're still in a very dangerous position in this.
They are. I'm actually very interested in seeing what weapons Gango wants going into this next fight. The Severum, obviously a huge team fight weapon to start disengaging. He will have Cleanse available for this next fight. If you can Cleanse, put on the Onslaught, and start regenning all that HP, that's a big way to turn around fights. But having the Crescendum available too means that your single target damage is absolutely absurd. If you get that, of course, that Onslaught into stacking those chakrams and getting yourself, kind of like a pseudo Ashes Q Rangers focus starting build up. You need to see, because it's only half a minute until that dragon comes up, if he's trying to cycle through the weapons into something more appropriate. I think this is good for a single target damage, though.
Warding is now the name of the game. V3 are going to try and find their way into the river. You can see Ramane is in the bot lane, clearing that wave out. Cog got that shoved early, which means he might be a little late to the play. Sengoku now have to try and find their way into the river. Of course, they do have a Scion, which makes things a little easier in some ways, but they have got to be a bit wary of coming through. Ramane is off vision and on the flank, could find something really dangerous here. Ace has got his face check! That's really risky. Gets ever frosted, but does survive. That was about as dangerous as it gets. Ramane has stolen the Encore again. He didn't get to use it in the last fight, but can certainly do so in this one. He's still around on this flank. V3 in the river. He is now on vision coming around. Dragon not started yet. It's going to be aggroed one more time, and Cog stepping forwards, and this is potentially where V3 have something of advantage. They've got a little bit of that range. They've got the Seraphine. They have the Jinx, but it's going to be started up. Crash got the level advantage over Mooch. It's going to be a big encore on the back end of it, and it's secured. That is Mountain Soul, and Cog desperately low in the backside, and Rhina is dead. He won't find the engage that time. He's done for. The horse is turned into glue. The factory, courtesy of Olaf, who finds another double for himself. Mountain Soul, fight over to Sengoku Gaming. This one will not be a Magnet Storm. Instead, it's just a squall that blows out all too quickly, and Sengoku Gaming will take their soul fight. They'll take that soul, and they'll move over to Baron just as quick as you like.
And you thought it was just a stiff breeze. It's not going to be the Magnet Storm deciding this one fight. Really, really need to praise Ramane. He bought up so much time, extended the range of the Encore by resetting its range, by hitting it through Cog, who'd left to try and deal with that pesky Silas on the flank. It wasn't a story about Aphelios, which it has been setting up to be for so long. And even though that Putrefier has come through from Ace, which makes it so hard to take extended fights, the burst comes through in spades, and V3 cannot hold against the onslaught of Sengoku.
They definitely cannot. All right, let's see this replay and tell me how this one all plays out, because Reiner tried. He really did to get in it.
He did,
stopped in his tracks.
But the thing about stuff like having your Lilias and your Rels and, of course, your Seraphins, that you want to fight front to back. You want things to be one-directional so they don't end up getting flanked and pulled apart at the seams. Yeah, Reiner tries, but he's doing it at completely the wrong time. There are two members charmed in the opposite direction, which means that the follow-up is just gone. Ace uses the flash, but he's already way out of position in this fight. And of course, Jinx is just dead and hits the floor. It's going bad to worst. Mujin getting closed down.
That's a nice statue pose, but Gango gets that kill. And it's going to continue on in this vein. You feel the Baron is going to be a relatively potent one, especially now with Mujin dead and Gango beginning the shove. Soul on as well. This Aphelios is just getting harder and harder to deal with. 3 items plus stopwatch plus mountain soul plus shields. How are you going to deal with it? Reiner's already burnt his flash. It's a hex flash or nothing at this point. You're still waiting on that cooldown to really find the engage. V3 need to try and hold on to these inhibitor turrets or I feel it's game over.
And looking at the Severum Mountain Soul Aphelios, that's a lot of shielding you got to get through. Yes, you can deny some of that heal, but that doesn't stop the extra HP coming in every so often from the Sengoku team. I think at this point, when you do have a hyper tank Sion who has 2 dragons, when you have an Olaf who's also tanky, I just don't think you have the staying power in the fights now to make things work.
Crash is getting engaged on, but has got Ragnarok.
He has
Maybe turn it
Sterak's.
around. He's got a lot of shields. He's got a Sterak's, and Ramone comes over the back. It's a 1v3, though. He's got a Lilia ult, so the Lilting Lullaby could come through. There it is. It's on to 2. Paz round the corner, and now V3 might have overextended trying to get the jungler. They weren't quick enough. Reiner is dead. The Rel is gone. Cog tries to disengage best he can with the Darkin Blade and does so, but it comes again at the cost of a member's life despite trying to find the pick, and I appreciate the look. I understand the idea. You need to find something, but lack of vision, lack of damage, and it's a lack of members now as Reiner falls again, and it's an uneven shove in. Still 30 seconds left on this Baron, and it's inhibitor turrets under siege in 2 lanes.
So Reiner looking so deadly in the team fights on the Rel, just can't get anything done this game. Not taking the right fights. Crash has gone for the stride break, goes forward for a bursty combo. And Ramone, look, the Mountain Dragon just makes him so difficult to close down.
Ramone just on to this one. Stopwatches the encore as well. That was nicely timed. He's got an encore himself now. And that means V3 trying to get in, go for the engage is so risky. If that encore can get turned around, it becomes very difficult. Inhibitors down in mid and top after that shove. The bot lane inhibitor turret down to about 20% HP as well. And Sengoku Gaming are in firm command of this game with an 8,000-ish gold lead.
That it is. There's a stopwatch on Aphelios who has both summoners available, and that's really scary for V3. You've not even been able to take a good enough fight to force away summoners. You take away a Ragnarok from Crash, and that's nice for a minute or so if you're trying to play around an objective or try and start up a 5v5. V3 don't have the option to take slow fights anymore. They just don't. They have to deal against that Mountain Soul, which means that even though they've managed to poke out somewhat effectively in previous fights, it's just not going to lead to anything in the next ones. NC on this Thresh even is going to be an absolute menace with, of course, the Guardian and the W and the Locket Shield coming through. Sengoku have more than enough ways to survive the initial burst, wait for the next round of Mountain Soul to come in, and take the fight anew.
And that's the problem, right? This Jinx has got 2.5 items. That's great. But you're looking at 4 plus stopwatch for Gango.
And it's also that into a Mountain Soul.
Right? Like, there's just not the damage. Never mind the tanky stats you're dealing with on top of it all. Crash gets a little chunked out by Cog, who is scared, but Ramone finds a massive encore over the wall. In goes Ramone. The abscond, the abduct, the tower falls to Gango, who's not even trying at this moment. He's got Infernum and Severum to really put the fires everywhere. And 200 years of fire, fury, and Aphelios is the phrase until he gets shut down. Cog puts the fire out real quick, and Paz might now actually be in a spot to bother, and maybe actually Jinx in the back end of this can make things a little difficult. That's 2 dead, and we spoke perhaps a little too soon. Sengoku Gaming, a little bit casual in that fight. They lose 3. do V3, but they get 2 in trade. That's better than you could perhaps have expected.
I didn't really expect Gango to flash melee range into Cog and get absolutely crapped on. Just gets his ass kicked.
It does that occasionally, does dear old Gango.
Hollow is walking down towards Baron. There is no smite around the objective. Mujin is only just respawned. There's a mounted soul on Sengoku, which I do think stops a lot of this burst going through. Oh, there's a hook just waiting around the corner. Luckily misses for the side of V3. Sengoku, casual in the base. That's the way you gotta put it. They just kind of let things slip just a bit. At least they're going to get themselves that Elder, get it on all 5 members, get to reset, go towards Baron in the next half a minute. This is still looking like lights out for V3. But how did this happen in the base? Because we were sat there going, yeah, you can't take extended fights. You probably can't burst them out. Things aren't looking great. Cog, though, is desperately trying his best. Reiner is sat there on mounted. He's unmounted and just doesn't get a chance to pop the ult for so long. He is CC'd for so damn long. There is no massive crash down to happen in this fight. And Gango still has it. He flashes straight into 2 Qs in a row and gets absolutely bopped. He's still like,
he had a stopwatch.
I can wait out this play. And yeah, he did have stopwatch. Yeah, he could have probably just turned that around. Lazy, perhaps. But either way, ends up winning that fight. Eventually, Jinx ult will not hit the Baron. Sengoku looking to seal it.
They get the Baron, they've got Elder Dragon still, and they've got to be looking to close this game out in short order. 9 turrets to 3, 12 kills to 7, 58.7k to 49.6. That is a 9,000 gold lead, by the way, for Sengoku Gaming, on top of all the other stats. And yes, they managed to get a little bit more than they were expecting in that last fight, but it was still, honestly, a lost team fight. Reiner on the flank with the Hex Flash. I don't think he's been spotted yet, but Gango relatively safe right now, and Paz is zoning away. Gango does get stepped by the Lilting Lullaby, but Ace just gets deleted, as does Hollow. No amount of shielding, no amount of healing will save you there. Reiner gets hooked, the death sentence once again. Oh, so apt. Cog pops the world ender, but the only world that is ending is V3's hopes in this game. Crash is just stopping here. He'll hop over the wall, and Crash just playing around right now. The game's over while those shenanigans are happening by the blue buff. And Sengoku Gaming find themselves a 2-1 lead in the series.
The game's over. You can go home. It's done. It's over. Well, the series still lives on. It's 2-1, as you were saying, for Sengoku. They do somehow manage to out-teamfight that Jinx. They find a way to it, which is something of a global meta has struggled to deal with for quite a while. Reiner, less of an impact on this rel this time, although there was that one huge fight around the dragon. They just couldn't get the objectives alongside it. V3 walk away with another loss.
Indeed, they do. Sengoku Gaming started off really well in the laning phase, and it kind of snowballed from there. But to talk a little bit more about this game, we'll have to do it on an analyst test, so give us a moment or two to get our thoughts together. I'll be back with that in a moment or two.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the desk. +1 initialize and Nymera. We're still here. We're still going 2-1 in Sengoku's favor. And this game felt rather comfortable for the side of Sengoku. But gentlemen, I'm getting ahead of myself. We first must talk about a very important thing. And lads, Seraphine actually got picked in this series.
She did. Finally gets picked. Ace gets it and doesn't get that much done. That said, I don't necessarily think it's Ace's fault. In all honesty, I think he had an okay game. But the problem, there was again one of the big fights where they did get was partly off a big encore. So, nothing bad there. The problem was the bot lane disintegrated. Gango's Aphelios strikes again. He hits his usual +30 at 15. He's got first turret. He's got a cull star. It's a disaster. Bot lane it's not cool.
I mean, let's go a little bit more in depth. Nymera, that bot lane, Sengoku decisively take the early game after a rather quiet 8 minutes where it's still even on gold. Well, even on kills, rather. Gold is a slightly different story.
That it is, because, I mean, it's something that we've talked about a lot to the point where we don't talk about it so much anymore, just because Gango on Aphelios just crushes the early game. He starts Cull, with Aphelios Thrash, they just win lane. They take huge trades, they manage to stack up minion waves and, push into turret, just as the Severum times out, and you get yourself stuff like the Gravitum and the Infernum. You use that first 2 weapons to get yourself priority in that lane, use the second ones to really punish under tower and use that Thresh Hook to get some real kill pressure, and they just slaughter this 2v2. It leads to, a full set of plates going down after a couple of kills end up sealing that turret eventually. And while, yes, the other lanes are uneventful into somewhat V3 favored, I mean, this bot lane was a disaster for V3.
Yeah. I mean, in the space of 2 minutes, it was a 300 gold lead at 10 minutes, something like that. In the space of about a blink of an eye, 2 minutes, it went from 300 to 4,000. It was a massive snowball. That kind of level of dominance out of a bot lane is always a bit scary to watch.
Well, though, V3 did find that opportunity, didn't they, initialize, and they were able to at least cut down that gold lead from 4 down in half to 2.
Yeah, it was the first time the comp kind of came together for Sengoku, or rather for V3. I apologize, because their comp made sense, right? You saw the Rel, the Seraphine, you got a Jinx firing in the backline, Aatrox to get onto this Aphelios and make his life really difficult because he can't flash away from all the Dark Blades. All of that makes sense, and they finally get a great combo where it's Encore into Crash Down, Magnet Storm, into the Darkin Blade, 4-man on all of them, deletes them around the Mountain Soul Dragon. This is after they've got a pick off as well, mind you, have Sengoku Gaming, so they're feeling confident to step forward. And where have I seen that before around feeling confident for Sengoku to step forward, having got a pick around Dragon? Yeah, they managed to get a lot of kills off that V3. It's a bright moment, but the problem is the subtext is Sengoku has still got a big gold lead. They've still got Aphelios who's very strong. They've also got the Mountain Soul point at that point, which is still very scary for V3 to deal with. And it's a feel-good moment, but it lacks substance is the problem. And it does come back to bite them a little bit. Yes, the Aatrox gets strong, but this Aphelios still out of control. Mountain Soul point still there, and it fortunately is a little bit of a one spark and not really a full fire.
I mean, let's actually go on to that next one where Sengoku Gaming fight around this next dragon, Nymera, and it goes extremely differently just from a fight setting up point to just kind of everything else as well.
I'm trying to actually remember which happened in that one, because honestly,
that was the one where Cog was on the back line against
exactly. Yes, gotcha.
Right.
Yes, sorry, I'm just there which are the big fights we're going for now? Yeah, so this was effectively something which the LJL has struggled to do actually in making a front to back team comp play on multiple angles, watch their flanks, have to watch all these different angles to go towards. And Ramune forces the issue. Ramune has had a really good set of playoffs so far. His first series was really good, especially that last game on the Rise was a real awakening moment for this player, which we've kind of known as a sleeping dragon for a little while, but we were waiting to see if that legend had truly gone. On the Silas, had some big ults in this game. Goes onto the through the Tribrush while the phalanx of V3 was waiting in the river. Cogcog has to move to go down and deal with him. Well, then he just uses Cogcog's body to extend the range of or reset the range of the Encore, and he gets this huge ult just as Reiner is going in. And at that point, it didn't even matter that Aphelios was almost burst out of that team fight and that Lilia almost came away with a really big set of plays too. Ramune had already pulled apart this combo from V3, and that was pretty much all she wrote from that fight.
Yeah, and they were then able to go on to the Death March, grab that Baron afterwards, and started their decisive push through top, through mid, and then they went into the last lane, into bot lane, and initialized. They weren't able to end. What?
Yeah, that one was a little bit interesting. Where, where effectively Sengoku get a little loose with their plays. They're feeling a bit confident. Ramune starts making stylish Everfrost Encore plays over the wall. And they go in. And
they had like a 7 or 8k gold lead, right?
Yeah, look, they still go 3-2. They still win the fight, but like it's sloppier than it needs to be. Especially after Gango gets slept, then tries to go on to the Aatrox and basically gets hit by 1Q. Flash into the next one, like doesn't stop watching, gets blown up, and it's like, well, that was a bit stupid, but it doesn't matter. They still get to back off and get the Elder Dragon, and it is lights out from there. And yes, Aphelios had a great early game, got massively fed off that, has good stats. Ramune as well, though I really do want to praise this guy. He's now got the highest DPM of any mid laner in playoffs after that last game on average. Like, he's having a really good time in playoffs, especially after we were pretty critical, honestly, of him through the regular season. Hell, we were pretty critical of him last year even. So it's good to see one of these old superstars turning it on into the playoffs right now.
Oh, he'll have some stiff competition, especially in that mid lane position if he is successful in getting through. Recap and Arya will be waiting if he is victorious, though it's going to be a battle to make it there. But gentlemen, with that recap, it now means Sengoku Gaming, 1 game off. And now, before we go to this break, I'm going to quickly go to you both. Initialize first. Will Sengoku go 3-1, or are we going to be pushed to Silver Scrapes?
I think Sengoku get it, but I'm aware there is a red side thing. Blue side seems to have the better side of picks and bans at the minute, and maybe V3 can do something, because they have contested pretty well, but I know Nightmare was a little bit weirded out by this draft, and still Sengoku came out on top
this
in
draft
gameplay. So
I mean,
Nightmare,
I mean, series for me have just seemed to be so much about teams being really prepped for one side and not really for the other. And if they both prep for the same side, then it's 3 or 3-2. It's like it's just like that, right?
Okay.
I think that actually it can go the full distance. I think that we're not going to see an Aphelios Thresh game set up for like that again. I think teams often forget about it just that one time. I actually think there's a good chance it goes to 5 games now.
Well, let's see, ladies and gentlemen. After this break, we will see if Sengoku Gaming can be victorious in match point and my predictions are correct, or will I be slumming it and it will be the full 5 games Silver Scrapes? Find out after this break.